What is the exact mathematical value of staying awake today?
Oh, wow. That is quite the question to start with.
Right. I mean, think about it. If you had to go to the pharmacy and just like buy a year's supply of simple daytime consciousness, what would the healthcare system actually charge you?
It's it's an incredibly difficult thing to quantify.
Because we usually think of a good night's sleep as this abstract, almost poetic concept, like a luxury you hope for after a long week.
Right. But when you strip away the poetry and look at chronic medical conditions, sleep, or really the lack of it, becomes a deeply economic issue. You're
Exactly.
suddenly dealing with this high-stakes intersection where human suffering meets healthcare financing and, of course, pharmaceutical innovation.
And that intersection is exactly what we are wading into for today's deep dive. Welcome in, by the way. We are looking at a real-world case study of how modern medicine attempts to solve that exact problem.
It's a fascinating one, too.
Yeah, we are pulling from this incredibly revealing article in the August 2026 issue of Sleep Review. It's titled, Institute Publishes Evidence Report on New Narcolepsy Treatment.
A bit of a dry title, but the implications are huge.
Massive. So the mission for you listening today is to look at this not just as like a medical story about a new pill. It's really a window into how the entire medical system decides what a breakthrough is actually worth.
And who actually gets to access it, which is the other half of the battle.
Right. All right, let's unpack this. We're looking at a brand new drug for narcolepsy type 1. For a long time in clinical development, it was known as the investigational therapy oporexin.
Yes, oporexin.
But it was just recently FDA approved in August 2026 under the commercial brand name Orzeyful.
Right. Developed by Takeda.
And what makes this so compelling is that the source isn't just handing us clinical trial results and telling us it's a miracle cure. We are actually looking at how independent researchers grade its tangible value to society.
Which is so rare to see broken down publicly like this. We're getting a blueprint for the future of medicine here.
But before we can even begin to talk about the economics and the price tags, we really need to talk about the biology.
Absolutely. You have to know what you're buying.
Right. So what is this drug, Orzeyful, actually doing that makes it so different from everything else that's already sitting on the pharmacy shelf for narcolepsy?
Well, to understand why this is such a breakthrough, you first have to understand the landscape of the disease itself. Narcolepsy type 1, or NT1, is this chronic, severely debilitating neurological disorder.
It's not just feeling a little tired.
No, not at all. It profoundly disrupts the brain's ability to regulate sleep-wake cycles. So patients experience this excessive daytime sleepiness that they literally cannot fight off.
Wow.
And they also often experience cataplexy. That's a sudden, uncontrollable loss of muscle tone. It's usually triggered by strong emotions like laughter or surprise.
That sounds terrifying, honestly.
It is. So enter this new drug, oporexin. It's classified as a, quote, first-in-class oral orexin receptor 2 agonist.
Okay, stop right there. First-in-class oral orexin receptor 2 agonist. That sounds like a mouthful of intense biochemistry.
It really does.
But if we break that down, it's actually describing a fundamentally new way of treating the brain, isn't it?
It is, and the critical takeaway for you listening is understanding what that jargon actually means in real life. So let's talk about orexin.
Okay, what is orexin?
Think of orexin as the brain's natural alarm clock chemical. It's like a master switch for wakefulness.
Okay, got it.
People living with narcolepsy type 1, they haven't just developed a bad sleep habit. They've actually lost the specific neurons in their brain that produce this crucial orexin chemical.
Wait, really? The neurons are just gone?
Exactly. Their brain is essentially missing the master switch that tells the body to stay awake and stable during the day.
Wow, so the brain is physically lacking the chemical signal for consciousness itself. And an agonist, at least in pharmacological terms, that acts kind of like a substitute key, right?
That is the perfect way to visualize it, yes.
So it fits into the same lock in the brain that orexin normally would, essentially replacing what the patient's brain is missing.
Exactly. An agonist mimics the natural chemical.
Right.
And that is huge because for decades, the standard of care for narcolepsy has largely been about managing the downstream symptoms of this missing chemical.
Like just treating the side effects of the broken switch.
Right. If a patient is too sleepy during the day, doctors prescribe a heavy stimulant to force the brain awake. If their sleep is totally fragmented at night, they prescribe a powerful sedative.
So you're just bouncing them back and forth between extremes.
Pretty much. The medical field has been locked in this constant battle with the symptoms of the disease. They're shocking the system awake or asleep, but never touching the disease itself.
And oporexin is entirely different.
Yes, because it directly addresses that underlying cause. It replaces the missing signal.
You know, let me try to build out a broader analogy to visualize this shift because it's so important.
Go for it.
If we think about the brain like a house, right? And narcolepsy type 1 is a massive, gaping hole in the roof that's just letting the rain pour in.
Okay, I like this.
The current medications we have, like the amphetamine-based stimulants, the heavy nighttime sedatives, those are basically just putting a bunch of really expensive, highly engineered buckets all over the living room floor.
That is painfully accurate.
You're managing the mess, you're keeping the hardwood floor from getting totally ruined, but the rain is still coming in. You're just dealing with the water.
Right.
Orzeyful, on the other hand, is like finally bringing in a contractor, climbing up a ladder, and actually patching the hole in the roof with new shingles.
What's fascinating here is there's a quote from the source material that really drives this paradigm shift home. It comes from Feluso Egbula.
Oh, right. She's the senior vice president of research at ICER, right?
Exactly. And ICER, for those who don't know, stands for the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review. They are this independent, nonprofit research institute that rigorously evaluated this drug.
Independent being the key word there.
Very key. So Egbula noted that the current narcolepsy treatment landscape includes several pricey medications that do not provide complete relief for patients.
Meaning patients are paying a massive premium for those buckets, but they are still living in a damp house.
Right. They are still dealing with the underlying reality of the leaky roof. And they're dealing with the side effects of those symptom management drugs, which, can be severe.
I can imagine. Taking heavy stimulants every day has to take a toll.
It absolutely does. Egbula points out that because this new medication directly targets the underlying cause, it promotes wakefulness and improves quality of life in a way that represents a true departure from the status quo.
It's offering foundational health benefits.
Exactly. It's addressing the actual broken neurological mechanism. The patient gets to stop managing the buckets.
Which is just an incredible moment for patients and for medical science in general. You patch the roof, you don't need the buckets anymore, and your quality of life inherently skyrockets.
Oh, 100%.
But, and here's the big but, creating a highly specific root cause patch requires billions of dollars in research and development, not to mention years of clinical trials.
Right, it doesn't come cheap.
And that brings us to a major tension point in healthcare. Someone has to actually verify that this biological key works exactly the way the manufacturer claims it does before the healthcare system agrees to pay for it.
And that verification process is arguably the most rigorous gauntlet a new drug has to run. That is exactly what ICER's final evidence report set out to do.
The report that was published on June 8th, 2026, right?
That's the one. ICER doesn't just take the pharmaceutical company's word for it. They take all the available clinical trial data, they pull it apart, and they rigorously analyze it to determine the comparative clinical effectiveness.
So they want to see the receipts.
They want to know, empirically, how this new drug stacks up against what patients are already taking. And they use a very specific, standardized grading system to communicate those results.
And this is where I want to push back a little bit. Yeah, on what we might consider a breakthrough. Because when you read the actual grades in the report, they sound a little, underwhelming to the untrained ear.
I can see why you'd say that.
The report states that when compared to no pharmacological treatment at all, meaning comparing Orzeyful against a placebo ICER, gave the drug a B+ rating.
Right.
Which indicates a moderate certainty of a small or substantial net health benefit. A B+ is good, but then it gets complicated.
It does.
When they compared Orzeyful to active treatments, the drugs already on the market that patients use every day, like modafinil or sodium oxybates, pitolisant received a C++ rating.
Yes.
I mean, if I brought home a C++ on a report card, my parents wouldn't be throwing a parade.
Probably not.
So does a C++ mean this drug isn't actually as groundbreaking as the mechanism of action suggests?
It is entirely understandable to have that initial reaction. We're so socially conditioned to view a C as decidedly average or, barely passing.
Right, it feels mediocre.
But we have to divorce ourselves entirely from the high school report card mentality when we read these clinical evaluations. In the highly skeptical, statistically demanding world of clinical evidence, a C++ means something entirely different. It actually carries massive weight.
Because the standard of grading in a clinical trial isn't just about passing a test. It's about proving definitive superiority against something that is already known to work really well.
Exactly. Let's look closely at what ICER is comparing Orzeyful against in that category. Those active treatments you just listed, especially sodium oxybates, these are heavy-hitting, deeply established drugs.
And they're the premium bucket.
They are incredibly effective, highly potent buckets that have served as the gold standard of care for years. Sodium oxybates is a powerful central nervous system depressant taken at night to deeply consolidate sleep.
Which then helps control the cataplexy and sleepiness the next day.
Right. It can be profoundly effective for many patients, even though it requires a very strict, sometimes difficult regimen to manage.
So the bar for success isn't just, does this drug make you feel better than nothing?
Yeah.
The bar is, does this brand new drug demonstrably beat out the most powerful battle-tested medications the medical field has spent decades perfecting?
And proving that a brand new drug is definitively, undeniably superior to those current heavyweights across a massive, diverse population. That is extraordinarily difficult to do based purely on early clinical trials.
I guess there just isn't enough long-term head-to-head data yet.
There isn't. So in ICER's scientific grading scale, achieving a C++ against those active comparators is actually a major victory. It technically indicates a moderate certainty of a comparable, small, or substantial net health benefit.
Meaning, ICER is essentially saying, we are mathematically confident this new drug is at least as good as, and very likely better than, the absolute strongest therapies we currently possess.
Yes. And when you factor in its novel mechanism of action, that C++ is a highly significant validation.
Because it's an oral medication acting as that skeleton key for the orexin receptor, too.
Right, it's addressing the root cause rather than just blanketing the brain in generic stimulants or depressants. It confirms that the underlying elegant science actually translates into real-world, measurable health benefits.
Benefits that compete directly with the reigning champions of narcolepsy treatment.
Precisely.
Well, that context completely changes how we read the report. It's not a mediocre grade at all. It's a validation that this new approach actually works in the arena.
Yes, and it does it by fixing the roof instead of managing the water.
So the science is verified. The clinical trials hold up. The independent researchers agree this is a meaningful leap forward. But, as we mentioned, discovering that skeleton key costs a fortune.
It does.
And that leads directly to the tension between biological innovation and healthcare economics. How does the system price this?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, or in this specific case, their roughly $50,000 question.
Yeah, let's get into the sticker shock here. The source material notes that at the time of the ICER report, the manufacturer, Takeda, had not yet announced the official U.S. commercial price for Orzeyful.
Right. They were still holding those cards close to the chest.
But ICER didn't wait around. They calculated what they call a health benefit price benchmark. And they set that benchmark at $50,400 to $59,400 per year for this therapy.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? Because to anyone listening, $50,000 to $60,000 a year sounds astronomical. It sounds like the kind of price that bankrupts patients.
It sounds staggering to the average person, absolutely.
So how can independent researchers possibly call $250,000 a, quote, value-based price?
Well, in the realm of specialty pharmaceuticals and complex health economics, you have to look at the macroeconomic mechanics at play. That $50,000 window is not an arbitrary number pulled out of thin air.
It's not just a guess.
No, and it's not just based on what it costs to manufacture the physical pill either. It is the result of incredibly complex economic modeling.
But economic modeling in healthcare is notoriously tricky. When ICER calculates that window, they must be weighing the asking price against the literal, quantifiable value of the health benefit it provides. Right?
That's exactly the calculation.
Like how much better the patient's life is and what that saves the system elsewhere.
Right. They're measuring the cost of the drug against fewer doctor visits, less need for supplemental medications, the ability for the patient to reliably hold a job, the general improvement in quality of life.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But, crucially, they're also factoring in the broader systemic impact on the healthcare system's overall budget. The report explicitly notes that if the drug is priced within this specific range, all potentially eligible patients could be treated without triggering a potential budget impact threshold.
A potential budget impact threshold. Okay, let me try to translate that into everyday terms.
Go ahead.
They're essentially saying, if the pharmaceutical company prices the drug inside this specific $50,000 window, The insurance companies and the healthcare system can actually afford to give this drug to every single patient who needs it,
Yes.
without bankrupting the system, without draining resources from other diseases, and without forcing insurance premiums to skyrocket for everyone else.
That is a very clear, accurate way to translate it. It is the economic sweet spot. It's the price point where the manufacturer is fairly rewarded for their medical innovation, while the healthcare system can sustainably absorb the cost.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to go back to Fuluso Agbula's insight from the report. She stated that choosing a value-based price would, quote, help de-escalate the cycle of high prices being met with onerous access challenges.
Yes, de-escalating the toxic cycle.
Right.
Because we see this play out in the news all the time.
Right. A drug company invents a cure, they price it at something insane like $150,000 a year, and then the insurance companies understandably freak out.
They refuse to cover it. Or they put up massive bureaucratic walls. It becomes an entirely adversarial relationship.
And when the pharmaceutical company and the insurance company go to war over the price, who loses?
The patient. The patient is the one caught in the crossfire, unable to access the breakthrough therapy they desperately need.
Exactly. So Agbula is arguing that this independent analysis offers a literal, mathematically sound roadmap for a truce. It breaks that toxic cycle before it even starts.
It provides a path to improving affordability and access for the patient while maintaining the financial health of the entire system.
But even with a scientifically backed roadmap, insurance companies are still businesses, right? They still want to save money wherever they can.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us directly to the battleground of patient access and policy recommendations. Because even if a drug is priced fairly according to ICER, it doesn't mean the insurance company is just going to hand it over without a fight.
No, they have their own internal protocols for dispensing expensive medications. That is the unfortunate bureaucratic reality.
Right.
And ICER knows this, which is why they didn't just publish a spreadsheet of numbers and walk away. Following a formal voting session, they actually convened a policy roundtable to tackle the access issue head-on.
The source material outlines this nicely. ICER brought together clinical experts, patients who actually live with narcolepsy, payers, which is the industry term for insurance companies, and the manufacturer, Takeda.
They put all the stakeholders in a single room.
To hash out the real-world implications of this pricing and what constitutes fair access. And the most crucial recommendation that came out of that roundtable revolves around stopping a very specific insurance practice called step therapy.
Yes, step therapy.
The roundtable explicitly advised payers not to use step therapy to restrict access to oporexin, assuming the drug is launched at a fair price.
And that recommendation is a massive, proactive defense of the patient experience, because step therapy is one of the most contentious practices in modern medicine.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you haven't had to navigate the healthcare system with a chronic illness, you might not know what step therapy actually looks like in practice. Let me give you an analogy.
Please do.
Imagine you break your leg in a skiing accident, and your orthopedic surgeon says you need a highly specialized, modern cast to heal properly.
Okay.
But your insurance company looks at the bill and says, hold on, that cast is expensive. According to our protocols, first, we need you to try wrapping your broken leg in cheap duct tape for a month.
How?
If the duct tape fails and your leg is still broken and you are still in agony after 30 days, then you can step up to a wooden splint for another month. And if that fails, then we will authorize the cast your doctor originally prescribed.
It's absurd when you put it like that.
Step therapy is essentially a medical obstacle course designed entirely by accountants. It forces a patient to take older, cheaper drugs and actively fail on them over a period of months before they are allowed to step up to the newer drug.
And what happens when you force a patient to run that obstacle course for a drug like Orzeyful? It is not just frustrating. The roundtable emphatically stated that it is medically inappropriate.
Medically inappropriate.
Yes. Step therapy is a cost containment strategy. In some areas of medicine where you have multiple interchangeable generic drugs that all work the same way, it might make economic sense to try the cheapest one first.
But for a drug like this, the underlying logic falls apart completely.
Exactly. Because it goes right back to the leaky roof and the mechanism of action.
You can't ask a patient to try buckets first when you know the roof is broken.
Right. Remember what we established about oporexin? It has a fundamentally novel mechanism of action. It directly addresses the biological cause by acting as that substitute key.
While the older, cheaper drugs on the market are just symptom-masking stimulants and depressants.
So making a patient fail on symptom-masking drugs first is clinically counterproductive. You are actively denying them a treatment that acts on their disease in a fundamentally different way.
You can't ask a patient to artificially fail on a generic stimulant when the new drug isn't a stimulant at all. It's comparing apples and oranges purely to save a buck on the quarterly balance sheet.
While the patient loses months of their life to debilitating exhaustion. The Roundtable recognized this massive discrepancy.
They saw right through it.
They did. They concluded that if the manufacturer prices the drug fairly within that window, erecting these bureaucratic hurdles is entirely unjustified.
And that leads to the final, perhaps most empowering call to action found in the ICER report. It highlights that patient organizations have a uniquely powerful voice in this ecosystem.
They absolutely do. They have the moral authority, the lived experience, and the collective leverage to create significant pressure across all sectors of the health system.
They are the ones who can take this independent evidence report, look the insurance executives in the eye, and demand that they adhere to this roadmap.
They can demand fair pricing from the drug company and appropriate obstacle-free coverage from the insurance company. Because the science is ultimately meaningless if the economics prevent the patient from ever swallowing the pill.
Patient advocacy is the bridge between clinical innovation and real-world access.
It really is.
It's just a fascinating, complex ecosystem. So we started this deep dive looking at a genuine scientific breakthrough, right? Orzeyful, a drug that fundamentally changes the game for narcolepsy type 1.
By acting as a substitute key for the brain's missing wakefulness chemical, targeting the root cause instead of just managing the exhaustion.
Exactly. We looked at how independent researchers gave it rigorous clinical grades, that solid C++ that proves it can genuinely go toe-to-toe with the established medical heavyweights.
Right.
And then we explored how an independent benchmark of around $50,000 to $60,000 a year isn't just a random price tag. It's a carefully calculated macroeconomic roadmap.
Designed to guarantee fair insurance coverage for everyone who needs it, without forcing patients to run the cruel obstacle course of step therapy.
It is a profound demonstration of the delicate balance between biological science, healthcare economics, and human policy.
Truly.
And whether you have narcolepsy or not, this matters to you. Because this entire situation is a real-time case study in how modern medicine evaluates human well-being.
It affects all of us.
It's a look behind the curtain at how society tries to put a fair numerical price tag on scientific innovation. Every time a new cure is announced, for any disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, whatever, this exact same negotiation has to happen.
It does. And as our scientific capabilities continue to accelerate, this raises an important question for all of us to consider.
Let's hear it.
As medical science advances and we develop more and more drugs that cure or target the actual root causes of chronic illnesses, rather than just cheaply managing their symptoms for decades, will our current insurance systems even be able to handle the high upfront costs?
That's the big question.
Or will we need to entirely redesign how we pay for healthcare in a world where true root cause medical breakthroughs become the norm rather than the exception?
It really makes you wonder how long the system can survive if we keep trying to price the patch like we price the buckets. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we'll catch you next time you're ready to learn something new.
Until next time.